My son secretly sold my late husband's Rolex for just $800. He had no idea that inside that watch was a hidden compartment holding the key to nearly $3 million. But what no one expected was that my husband had already anticipated his own son's betrayal and left behind a perfect trap to protect me even after his death. But before I go on, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love knowing how far our stories travel. Stop complaining, Mom. It's sold. Just accept it. My son, Michael's words hit me like a slap. I froze in the kitchen, my hands still wet from washing dishes. The coffee cup Richard used every morning trembled between my fingers. 6 months. It had only been 6 months since I buried the man I had been married to for 43 years, and now my own son had sold his Rolex without even asking me. To me, that watch wasn't just an object. It was a piece of him. The thing he wound every morning, keeping a ritual alive, a ritual Richard had taught me. It was my daily connection to the man I had loved for more than 4 decades. Mom, seriously, let it go. It's just a watch, Michael said as he leaned in the kitchen doorway like he owned the place. Beside him, Jessica, his wife, didn't bother looking up from her phone. In that moment, I tasted the true bitterness of betrayal. It was cold, metallic, like pennies pressed to the tongue. I swallowed hard and asked calmly, "Which pawn shop?" Finally, Jessica looked up, her eyes dripping with disdain she had practiced for years. "Oh, good. You're finally being reasonable. Honestly, Nancy, clinging to material things isn't healthy. Richard wouldn't want you stuck in the past." I bit my lip and said nothing. Since the funeral, Jessica had been invoking Richard's name to force me to give them this or agree to that. "West Side Pawn on Main Street," Michael answered, glancing at the expensive Apple Watch on his wrist, which surely cost more than what he got for his father's Rolex. They gave me $800. Not bad for something so old. $800. A measly $800 for a 1,978 Rolex Submariner that Richard had worked 3 months of overtime to buy the year Michael was born. He wore it every day of our marriage except the day he died when the hospital handed it back in a plastic bag along with his wedding ring. "That watch is worth at least $3,000. I snapped, fury boiling inside me. Jessica scoffed. "In what universe? It doesn't even keep time." "Only because I was the one who wound it every day, keeping it alive, keeping Richard alive in some small way. But they would never understand." Michael and Jessica lived in a world where everything had a price, but nothing carried meaning. "I'll get it back," I declared. "Good luck," Michael said, heading to the door. "We fly out early tomorrow." Jessica followed, but before she left, she turned back with feigned concern. "Nancy, you really should get therapy. Being obsessed with Richard's stuff isn't normal." The door slammed shut, leaving me alone with the bitter taste of betrayal and the silence that had been my only companion since Richard's death. But there was one thing Michael and Jessica didn't know. I had been a bank manager for 40 years. I knew the difference between surrender and strategy, and I had stopped surrendering a long time ago. The next morning I drove to West Side Pawn. The place was exactly as I pictured it, cramped, dusty, lit with harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look pale. The man behind the counter, tattoos crawling up his arms and a tired face, spoke before I even opened my mouth. "You're here about the Rolex, aren't you? How did you know?" "Your son said you'd probably come. Said you'd have a hard time letting go." "Sorry, ma'am, but business is business. I paid the market price." Market price, as if you could put a number on 43 years of marriage, the sound of Richard winding that watch as the coffee pot gurgled. or the weight of it in my hand the day the nurse gave it back with his wedding ring. "I'll buy it back," I said firmly, "no matter the cost." The man, his name tag read Daniel, looked uneasy. "It's gone. Someone came in this morning and paid cash. No returns here." My heart sank. Some stranger was now walking around town with Richard's watch, and I might never see it again, all because my son needed pocket money for a vacation. But there is something. Daniel lowered his voice. He disappeared in the back and returned with a small brown envelope. When I cleaned the watch to sell it, I found a hidden compartment in the back, professionally done, probably by a jeweler. Inside was this. Inside the envelope was a yellowed slip of paper in Richard's careful handwriting. Nancy's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I would marry her. Below it was a string of symbols and numbers, SS 445 and 7Q15, amperes, GD. My hands trembled as I held the note. In all our 43 years together, Richard had never once mentioned a secret compartment in that watch. "Do these numbers mean anything to you?" Daniel asked. I shook my head, though deep down they felt familiar, like a password or account number. Richard was meticulous with records, always writing down important numbers in his neat hand. "What about the man who bought it?" I asked. Daniel's face hardened. "Why do you want to know?" "Because my husband hid this for a reason. And I think whoever bought that watch is in for a surprise. Ma'am, I really can't please understand." I leaned closer, letting him see the grief I still carried after 6 months. "That watch was everything I had left of him. I'm not asking you to break the law, just to tell me if that man seemed to know about the secret compartment." Daniel studied me for a long moment, then sighed. He didn't say much, but when I mentioned something inside, he got real interested. Asked if we'd opened it, paid cash. No paperwork, but he came in asking only about vintage Rolexes, specifically the one that had just come in. I left the pawn shop with more questions than answers. Someone out there was hunting for Richard's watch. But why? And how did they know about the hidden compartment? The slip of paper burned in my pocket like a secret I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. Richard had kept it hidden for 47 years, even from me. What else had he kept? That night I sat at Richard's desk in our bedroom, surrounded by 43 years of financial records. Richard had saved everything: bank statements, tax returns, investment reports, neatly organized. The slip of paper lay in front of me. I searched through every account, every investment, every safe deposit box. Nothing matched. Richard had always been cautious with money savings accounts, careful spending, a modest retirement fund. Nothing extravagant, nothing hidden. Or so I thought. The ringing phone cut through my thoughts. Michael's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, Jessica's upset. Did you cause a scene at the pawn shop?" I almost laughed. Since when was trying to reclaim my husband's stolen watch considered causing a scene? "I went to buy back your father's watch, but someone else already bought it. See? That's it. It's over. Just move on." Michael's indifferent tone made my chest tighten with anger. This was the boy Richard had worked himself to the bone to provide for, the little kid he taught baseball and how to change a tire. When had Michael grown so cold? Michael, there was something inside the watch. "Your father left a message." Silence. "What kind of message?" His voice sharpened, cautious now. "I'm not sure. It looks like a password or account number." "Mom." His voice faltered, the first time he had sounded interested in his father since the funeral. "What does it say?" "Just a few numbers," I hedged. "Probably nothing important. Maybe I should come over, help you figure it out." I laughed bitterly. Yesterday he told me to stop living in the past, and now he wanted to help me organize Richard's things. Michael sighed. Fine, be stubborn, but don't blame me when you drive yourself crazy chasing ghosts. I hung up and stared at the phone. His sudden interest felt suspicious. Maybe to him, Richard's belongings were more than worthless memories. I turned back to the desk, this time thinking differently. Instead of searching for an account that matched the numbers, I looked for a pattern. Richard had been an accountant. He thought in systems, in logic. SS could be Social Security. His number started with 457, not 44457. Q15AG made me pause. AG could mean August 15th, our wedding anniversary. NS were the initials of my name, Nancy Silva. I opened my laptop and began searching. Offshore banks in the Cayman Islands, international investment firms, many used codes like this. 3 hours later, I found it. Secure Solutions Investment Management, headquartered in the Cayman Islands. A discreet professional website serving high-net-worth clients seeking privacy and security. The login page required a client number and password. With trembling fingers, I typed in SS4457Q15AGNS. A valid account number appeared on the screen. Now I needed the password, something only I would know, something Richard trusted I'd discover. I tried our wedding date, our home address, my birthday. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the note. Nancy's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I would marry her. Not my real birthday. July 15th was the day we met at a summer party in Central Park. Richard always said he knew. That night he would marry me someday. I typed 07155 and held my breath. Access granted. The screen that loaded made me gasp. Current balance, $2,847,029.67. Richard had hidden nearly $3 million from me throughout our marriage. I sat there staring until the numbers etched into my vision. $2.8 million in an account I never knew existed, at a bank I'd never heard of. Hidden by the man who shared my life for 43 years, who convinced me we lived paycheck to paycheck. Every argument about money, every coupon I clipped, every generic grocery I bought, every work shirt of his I patched instead of replacing while he had millions in an offshore account. My first instinct was rage. Hot, searing rage for the disappointment, the lies by omission, for 43 years of wondering if we'd ever have enough for retirement while Richard secretly sat on a fortune. But then I clicked on the account history. The first deposit was in 1982, 3 years after Michael was born, $5,000. The note read, Initial Inheritance Investment, RS Inheritance. Richard had never mentioned any inheritance. I scrolled through years of deposits, all relatively small, 500 here, 1,000 there. The steady contributions explained why Richard had been so careful with our household budget. He wasn't hiding money from our income. He had been systematically building something separate. The deposits continued regularly until 2008, then spiked dramatically. Instead of hundreds, he was putting in 10 or 20,000 at a time. The note on those larger deposits chilled me. Property liquidation, New York real estate. Richard had been buying and selling properties without my knowledge. Houses I had never seen, investments I was never consulted on, secret deals that had made him wealthy. How do you live with someone for 43 years and not know they were conducting secret crime? Transactions? I clicked on the account messages and found a folder labeled Nancy, Emergency Access Only. Inside was a video file sent just 3 months before Richard died. I hesitated before pressing play. Whatever Richard had to say about this hidden fortune, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. But I was alone in our bedroom at midnight. My son had stolen the only clue to this mystery, and I was suddenly wealthier than I had ever imagined. Ready or not, I needed answers. Richard's face filled the screen, older and more tired than I remembered. He was sitting in his office at work, probably recording this on his lunch break. "Nancy, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone." His voice was steady, but his eyes carried a sadness I had never seen during all our years together. "I hoped you would never have to access this account, that we would grow old together, and one day I would tell you about it over dinner." He paused, rubbing his face out of old habit whenever a hard problem weighed on him. "This money isn't mine, sweetheart. It was my father's, hidden away before he died in 1981. He made me promise to keep it secret, to guard it, and to use it only if our family ever faced real danger." Richard's father had passed when Michael was just 2 years old. I remembered clearly how devastated Richard had been. I also remembered the modest inheritance that had helped us pay off the mortgage. Turns out there had been more. My father saw what economic crises could do to families, how quickly stability could vanish. He wanted to make sure his grandchildren were always protected, no matter what happened. Richard stared straight into the camera, and it felt like he was sitting right beside me. I invested the money carefully, safely. Every dollar is documented, all of it legal. It grew because I reinvested it for 40 years, but the original sum was meant as an emergency fund, a kind of disaster insurance. The grew because I round. Video went on, Richard explaining the account in detail, his investment strategies, the legal safeguards he had taken, but only one line echoed in my mind. "I hoped you would never have to access this account." Richard died suddenly of a heart attack at work, without a single warning sign. How could he have known I'd need this money, unless the disaster he feared wasn't random at all? Unless Richard had known something about our family I was only now beginning to see. The next morning, I called the library, where I worked part-time, and said I was sick. For the first time in 6 months, something mattered more than shelving returned books or reminding kids to keep quiet. I needed to understand what Richard meant by real danger. The account had records stretching back 40 years, but I started with the recent activity. The last deposit Richard made was just 2 weeks before he died. $25,000, note, property sale, emergency liquidation. Emergency liquidation. Richard had been cashing out assets right before his death. I spent the whole morning combing through his real estate transactions. The man I had lived with for 43 years turned out to be a secret real estate mogul, buying and selling properties all over New York with money I never knew existed. But what chilled me was this. Every property Richard sold in the past year had been purchased by the same company, Silva Investments, LLC. Silva was also Michael's last name. I picked up the phone and called my nephew Andrew, who worked in real estate. If anyone knew about deals in New York, it was him. "Aunt Nancy, how are you?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Listen, I need to ask you something. Have you ever heard of a company called Silva Investments, LLC? Andrew went quiet for a moment. "Actually, yes. They've been pretty active lately, buying up a lot of good properties, all cash, moving fast." "Why?" "Do you know who owns it?" "Let me check. Give me an hour." I spent that hour digging deeper into Richard's desk, hunting for files tied to real estate deals. At the bottom of a 40-year-old tax folder, I found a thick binder marked insurance policy. But inside weren't insurance papers, it was contracts, property deeds, and correspondence about investments. At the very end was a letter that made my hands shake. It was from a private investigator, dated 6 months before Richard died. Mr. Silva, as you requested, I've completed my financial investigation into your son, Michael Silva. The results are troubling. Your son has approximately $10,000 in gambling debts across multiple offshore betting sites. He has also taken out several high-interest loans for business purposes, using falsified income and asset statements. More concerning, he has been inquiring into your assets, contacting 3 different attorneys about inheritance law and how to contest a will. He has also asked about power of attorney procedures and elder care facilities. I believe your son is planning to declare you incompetent in order to seize control of your estate. The documents I found suggest he's been researching this for months. I strongly recommend immediate action to protect your assets and ensure your wife's financial safety. Respectfully, Thomas Harris, private investigator. My phone rang. It was Andrew. Aunt Nancy, you won't believe this. Silva Investments LLC is owned by Michael Silva. You're Michael. I closed my eyes. The last pieces slid into place. Richard hadn't been hiding money from me. He had been hiding it from Michael. Every house sale, every stack of cash, every emergency liquidation was him moving assets out of his son's reach. Richard had known his own son was plotting to steal from him, but he died before he could warn me. All he left was the secret compartment in the watch, a breadcrumb trail for me to uncover the truth. My son hadn't pawned Richard's Rolex for vacation money. He took it because he was searching for the very thing I had just found the key to the hidden fortune. And now that Michael knew I had discovered something inside that watch, he wouldn't stop until he got it. I was still sitting in Richard's chair, eyes fixed on the investigator's report, when I heard Jessica's key turning in the front door. She had kept a spare key since the funeral, supposedly to check on me when Michael was busy. Now I realized she had been checking on Richard's assets. Nancy, you home? Jessica's voice rang out, dripping with fake sweetness. Michael and I just wanted to stop by before heading to the airport. I hurriedly slid the investigator's report back into the binder and minimized the offshore account screen on the laptop. Whatever Michael and Jessica were plotting, I needed to understand the rules before showing my hand. I'm upstairs, I called out. Minutes later, they appeared at the door. Michael carried a small suitcase. Jessica dressed in clothes that screamed luxury vacation. The designer sunglasses on her face probably cost more than some people's rent. Just wanted to say goodbye, Michael said, though his eyes scanned Richard's desk, flicking over the papers scattered there. What are you working on, Mom? Sorting through your father's files, I answered carefully. There's so much I never knew. Jessica stepped closer, eyes fixed on my laptop. Find anything interesting? Her question sounded casual, but I caught the sharp edge in her voice. This wasn't a social visit. It was reconnaissance. Just old statements and tax returns. Your father was meticulous with records. Michael relaxed slightly. That's true. He was obsessive. Probably kept every receipt for the past 20 years. Actually, I said, deciding to test them, I did find something a little odd. Your father had some kind of investment account I never knew about. Not much, just a few. 1,000. Their faces changed instantly. Michael stepped forward, trying to look calm but unable to hide the tension. An investment account? What kind? I'm not sure. The paperwork's confusing. I might hire an accountant to help me sort it out. Jessica shot a quick glance at Michael. We could help. Michael's great with financial documents. I remembered the investigator's report about Michael's gambling debts and fraudulent loans. Thanks, but I've already scheduled an appointment with Richard's old accounting firm. They'll know how to handle it. Michael's jaw tightened. Mom, they charge $300 an hour. I could look at it for free. I can afford $300 an hour, Michael. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Jessica's mask of concern slipped, revealing the calculation beneath. Michael nearly vibrated with frustration. We should go, Jessica cut in. Don't want to miss our flight. But Michael lingered. Mom, about the message you found in Dad's watch, maybe I should take a look at those numbers before we leave, just to make sure they're not important. What numbers? Jessica asked quickly. Michael shot her a warning look. Mom found some kind of code inside the watch. Probably nothing, but still. Now Jessica was fully alert, her vacation mood gone, replaced by sharp focus. What kind of code? I stood slowly, meeting my daughter-in-law's eyes. The kind that doesn't concern you. Jessica's face flushed red. What did you just say? My husband left me a private message. Private is the key word. Mom, Michael cut in, with that patronizing tone I hated. We're family. No need for secrets. Secrets? I almost laughed. Like your secret gambling debts? Or the secret company you've been using to buy properties with money you don't have? Michael's face drained of color. Jessica's mouth dropped. Open. I don't know what you're talking about, Michael stammered, his voice trembling. Silva Investments LLC ring a bell? I asked. Both of them paled. Your father knew everything, Michael. He knew it all. Jessica recovered first, her voice venomous. You crazy old woman. You don't know anything. I know your husband owes $10,000 in gambling debts. I know he was planning to declare me incompetent. And I know he's been plotting for months. Michael sagged against the doorway as if the strength had left him. How do you know? He whispered. Your father hired a private investigator. Every lie, every debt, every scheme is documented. I walked to the desk, lifted the investigator's report, and held it where Michael could see the heading. Your father protected me from you, even after he died. The code you care so much about is the key to money beyond your wildest dreams, but you'll never touch it. Jessica yanked on Michael's arm. We need to go. Now. But Michael just stared at me, and for the first time in years there was something like respect in his eyes. He truly knew. He knew his own son had planned to rob his mother. What kind of man does that, Michael? For money? For a fleeting moment, he looked like the boy I once raised, confused, ashamed. But Jessica's grip tightened, and the moment passed. This isn't over, Jessica hissed as they turned to leave. No, it ended the day you decided my life or death was worth the price of what you wanted to steal, I shouted after them. The door slammed, leaving me with Richard's secrets and the truth that the real fight was only just beginning. 2 days later, the doorbell rang at 8 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a sharp business suit, holding a stack of files. Behind her stood a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a law school advertisement. Mrs. Silva, I'm Catherine Roberts from Roberts and Associates. This is my colleague, David Kim. We represent your son, Michael, in certain family legal matters. Family legal matters. That's what they called it. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. What can I do for you? Catherine smiled, warm but false, the kind of smile that bills hundreds an hour. Mrs. Silva, your son is concerned about your health. He asked us to discuss some options that could benefit everyone. David stepped forward, tablet in hand. We understand you may have discovered certain financial accounts your husband kept. While we're sure his intentions were good, managing complex investments can be overwhelming, especially while you're grieving. Overwhelming. as if I hadn't managed our family's finances for 40 years while Richard secretly played real estate mogul. Thank you for your concern, but I am fully capable of handling myself. Catherine's smile never wavered. Of course, but please consider your son could help shoulder this burden. They've already prepared the papers to give Michael financial power of attorney, just temporary, they say, until you get past your grief. Exactly what Richard's investigator had warned me about. Temporary, I repeated. And who decides when that ends? David glanced at Catherine, then answered, That would be for us to assess. Of course, of course. I stepped back toward the door. Well, I think this is where we stop. Mrs. Silva, Catherine's voice sharpened, your son will be filing a petition with the court to have your competence reviewed. He's concerned you've been making unusual financial decisions. Unusual? I asked. Like what? Accessing offshore accounts, conducting international transactions without professional guidance. To outsiders, it may look like you're not thinking clearly. The threat was crystal clear. Sign over power of attorney or be declared incompetent. You know, what's interesting about threats, I said, leaning against the doorframe. They only work if the person being threatened doesn't have a better lawyer than you. Catherine's professional mask slipped for just a second. I'm sorry. Tell my son this scheme will never work. Richard didn't just leave money. He left protection. I slammed the door shut, then immediately dialed the number I'd found in Richard's secret files. Thomas Harris, private investigator, picked up right away. Mr. Harris, this is Nancy Silva, widow of Richard Silva. Mrs. Silva, I've been expecting your call. 6 months ago, Richard asked me to prepare a full legal defense file in case anyone tried to challenge his competence or his estate. Everything is ready. Richard had stayed 3 steps ahead, even in death. How ready? I asked. Mrs. Silva, once I present the evidence of gambling debts, fraudulent loans, and elder exploitation schemes, your son will be lucky if he isn't facing criminal charges. For the first time in months, I truly smiled. Mr. Harris, I think it's time to make a few calls. His office, tucked inside a gleaming building in downtown New York, reeked of expensive legal work. As I sat across from him, reviewing the file Richard had arranged, it hit me that my husband had been preparing for this showdown long before he passed. Your husband was extremely meticulous, Thomas said, spreading papers across a polished wooden desk. Bank statements showed Michael's gambling debts, recordings of him plotting to have me declared incompetent, even photographs of him meeting with inheritance lawyers. The recordings. Thomas nodded gravely. Richard had suspected Michael was scheming, so last year he legally placed microphones throughout our home. It was his property after all. I suddenly thought of every conversation Michael and Jessica had had in my kitchen over the past 6 months, every insult about my mind, every calculation about Richard's assets, every cruel joke about putting me in a nursing home. Richard had heard it all. And more, Thomas continued. Richard discovered Jessica was deliberately isolating you from friends and family. She told people you were becoming forgetful, that you needed supervision. The pieces fell into place. Why my sister-in-law stopped calling, why the neighbors looked at me strangely, why my friends at the book club treated me like I was fragile glass. Jessica had built an entire whisper campaign, paving the way for the lawsuit Michael was planning. How strong is this case file? I asked. Strong enough to crush any challenge to your competence and possibly put them both in prison for elder abuse and fraud. Thomas lifted a thick folder. But there's one more thing. Richard left very specific instructions for accessing the offshore account. He handed me a sealed envelope, my name written in Richard's familiar hand. Inside was a letter, dated just 1 week before he died. My dearest Nancy, if you're reading this, it means Michael has shown his true face, and you've uncovered the account I built over 40 years. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive, but I had to protect you from Michael until the right moment. This money isn't just inheritance, it's justice. Every dollar came from investments I made based on information Michael thought he was hiding from us. When he launched his real estate company, he bragged about inside deals, about sure bets. He never knew I was listening, investing in those very opportunities with money he never knew existed. Michael, unknowingly, financed his own downfall. Every time he flipped a property, I bought 3 more in the same neighborhood. Every time he whispered about a stock, I invested part of our original inheritance. The offshore account exists because I turned Michael's greed against him. Now, it's your turn to do the same. Thomas has the Fossaveri 15. Instructions to transfer funds immediately. Once you read this, you'll have financial independence Michael will never touch. More importantly, you'll have the power to decide how this ends. You can forgive him, care for him despite his betrayal, hope he becomes a better man, or you can let him face the consequences of trying to rob his own mother. The choice is yours, my love. Forever yours, Richard. I set the letter down, my hands trembling. Richard hadn't just protected me from Michael, he had arranged for Michael to collapse under the weight of his own schemes. Mrs. Silva, Thomas said, studying me closely. Are you ready to move forward? I thought of Michael as a little boy, excited on his first day of school. Then of the son standing in my kitchen 2 days ago, calling me a crazy old woman while his wife threatened me. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Mr. Harris, I want you to submit every piece of evidence we have to the authorities, and I want it done today. The next morning, chaos descended on my quiet suburban New York street. I was sipping coffee, reading the paper, when 3 black vans pulled up in front of Michael and Jessica's house across the road. Men in jackets marked FBI began hauling box after box of files out the door. My phone rang instantly. Mom! Michael's voice was panicked. What did you do? I protected myself, I said calmly, watching through the kitchen window as agents carried out computers and documents. It's what you should have done for family instead of trying to steal. You don't understand, this will ruin us. You ruined yourselves. I just recorded it. Jessica's shrill voice cut in on the line. You bitter old witch. We were only trying to help you. Help? By stealing my husband's watch, plotting to declare me incompetent, spreading lies to isolate me from friends and family. The line went quiet, only Jessica's ragged breathing on the greed. Other end. Richard knew everything, Michael. Every debt, every lie, every scheme. He spent the last year of his life protecting me from you. No, Dad would never do that. Your father hired a private investigator to document your gambling addiction and your plan to steal his estate. He planted microphones in this house to record every conversation about putting me in a nursing home. I heard Michael groan like a wounded animal. The FBI is seizing your business records because Richard's evidence proves you committed loan fraud. The IRS is investigating you for hiding income. And the state prosecutor is charging you with elder abuse. Mom, please. Michael's voice cracked. I never wanted it to go this far. When, Michael? When did you decide my death was worth more than my life? A long silence. Then Michael whispered, when I realized Dad was hiding money. I saw some papers in his office last Christmas, mentioning accounts I'd never heard of. I figured if you both passed, it would all automatically come to me. The truth, raw and ugly, but at least clearer than the months of lies. You were wrong. Richard made sure everything was out of your reach. How much? Michael asked. How much did he hide? Enough that I'll never again have to rely on a family that treats me like a burden. I hung up, watching through the window as FBI agents led Michael and Jessica to separate cars. Jessica screamed, probably demanding a lawyer, threatening lawsuits. Michael looked completely broken. The phone rang again. This time it was my neighbor, Patricia. Nancy, I'm calling to apologize. Jessica told me you were having memory problems, and I believed her. I should have asked you first. It's all right, Patricia. Jessica is persuasive, but Michael really was planning to steal from me. I glanced at Richard's photo on the mantel, remembering the man who protected me even after he was gone. Yes, but now. It's over. 3 weeks later, I sat in Thomas Harris's office, reviewing the final legal documents. Michael and Jessica were facing federal fraud charges. Their business was seized, their assets frozen pending investigation. But that morning, an unexpected visitor appeared. Mrs. Silva, someone is here to see you, Thomas's secretary said. He says his name is Robert Turner, and he has something that belongs to you. The man who entered was about 60, neatly dressed, carrying himself with the caution of someone who had once worked in law enforcement. In his hand was a familiar blue velvet box. Mrs. Silva, I'm the one who bought your husband's watch at the pawn shop. I stared at him, confused. How did you know where to find me? Robert smiled, setting the box on Thomas's desk. Because Richard Silva hired me 20 years ago to safeguard this watch if anything ever happened to him. I don't understand. I'm a retired federal investigator, Mrs. Silva. Your husband hired me to monitor certain situations. When that watch showed up at the pawn shop, I was notified immediately. Thomas scribbled notes quickly. You were tracking Michael Silva. And more than that, Richard prepared thoroughly. Robert opened the velvet box, revealing Richard's Rolex. But there's one more thing you need to know. He flipped the back of the watch, pressed a hidden spot. A second secret compartment popped open, smaller than the first. Inside was a micro SD card. Richard recorded everything, Mrs. Nancy. Every conversation Michael had about manipulating me. Every meeting with lawyers about declaring me incompetent. Every discussion about what to do with Richard's assets once I was gone. The room tilted. Richard had been recording Michael for 18 months. Audio, video, financial records, everything needed to ensure Michael could never challenge my competence or my right to Richard's estate. Robert slid the SD card into Thomas's computer. The screen filled with folders, audio files, video files, financial documents, even photographs of Michael meeting with lawyers and gamblers. My husband had loved me enough to spend the last 2 years of his life building an unbreakable legal defense against his own son. I remembered those final months, Richard's tired face, the late nights at his desk. He hadn't been avoiding me, he had been protecting me. And one more thing, Robert said softly. Richard had left precise instructions in case Michael tried to declare me incompetent. He handed me one last envelope, marked, Nancy, the final protection plan. Inside was a document that took my breath away. If Michael Silva pursued legal action to strip Nancy Silva of competence, then all assets held by Silva Investments would be immediately transferred to New York Children's Hospital under Michael Silva's name. Every gambling debt, outstanding loan, attorney fee, and court costs tied to elder abuse charges would be Michael Silva's sole responsibility. He would not receive a single benefit from the estate or any transfer of property. Richard had arranged for Michael to inherit nothing but his own ruin. "Your husband was truly extraordinary," Thomas said, awestruck. "He turned Michael's greed into a legal trap," Robert added. Richard knew Michael would never stop chasing the money, so he made sure that any attempt to seize it would strip Michael of everything he had. I held Richard's watch, feeling its familiar weight in my hand. For 43 years, I thought I had married a simple accountant, careful with every penny. But in truth, I had married a master strategist, a man who spent the last 2 years of his life building the most intricate protection plan imaginable. "Mrs. Silva," Robert said gently, "your husband asked me to deliver one last message if this day ever came." He handed me another envelope, unsealed, in Richard's handwriting. "Nancy, you have always been stronger than you think. I only wanted to make sure you had the tools to prove it. Forever yours, Richard." 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of New York Children's Hospital, watching workers mount a bronze plaque that read, "In memory of Richard Silva." Richard's assets not only secured my future but also funded the hospital expansion he had always dreamed of. Ironically, Michael's scheme to steal became the largest donation in the hospital's history. My phone buzzed with a message from Thomas Harris. Michael's sentencing was set for the following week. They were recommending 2 years in federal prison and full restitution. Jessica had accepted a deal for 18 months. "Would you like to attend?" he asked. I replied, "No, I have better things to do." And I truly did. At 68, I was finally living the life Richard had fought to protect for me. I bought a little house near a lake in the suburbs, joined 3 book clubs, and started volunteering at the hospital twice a week. For the first time in decades, my choices were mine, not dictated by family expectations. The doorbell rang as I was preparing dinner. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman, eyes like Michael's, with a hesitant smile. "Grandma Nancy, it's me, Sophia, Michael's daughter." I hadn't seen her since Richard's funeral. Back when she started college and her first job, Jessica had made sure to cut me off from my grandchildren. I opened the door. "Sophia, what a surprise. I know I should have called first." She twisted her hands together. "I know about Dad and Jessica, about what they did. I came to apologize. You have nothing to be sorry for." "Yes, I do. I knew something was wrong. Dad always asked about Richard's finances, and Jessica kept talking about your memory. I should have spoken up." Looking at Sophia's face, I saw Richard's honesty and Michael's features all at once. "Come in. Let's talk." Over dinner, she told me about her new job as an elementary school teacher, her engagement to a young doctor, and her guilt over her father's choices. "I think I should visit him in prison," she said, "but I'm so angry about what he did to you." "Anger is normal, but Michael is still your father." "Why don't you hate him?" I thought of Richard's letter, the choice he'd given me between forgiveness and justice. "Because hatred means he still has power over me. I choose peace." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "I missed you so much. Jessica told everyone you were confused and didn't want to see us anymore. I never stopped wanting to see you, and I never will." As Sophia helped me clear the table, she paused at Richard's photo on the mantel. "I always wondered why he wore that watch every day. He must have loved it so much." I smiled, thinking of the 2 hidden compartments, the offshore account, the intricate plan that had saved my life. He didn't love the watch itself, he loved what it protected. That night, after Sophia left with a promise to visit every week, I sat on the porch watching the sunset over the lake. Richard's watch rested on my wrist, still ticking with perfect accuracy. He had been gone 6 months, yet somehow he was still guarding me. The greatest love stories are not about passion or romance, but about protection, about someone who loves you enough to fight battles you never even knew existed. Richard spent 2 years preparing for a war I didn't see coming, making sure his death would never leave me defenseless against our own son's greed. Some people spend their whole lives searching for that kind of love. I was lucky enough to wear it on my wrist for 43 years. Sitting in my quiet home, I realized that true love is not measured by sweet words or romantic gestures. It is proven through protection, through someone looking beyond their own life to make sure you are never left alone in the storm. Richard did that for me, and it was the greatest gift I've ever received. Family can be the source of unconditional love, but it can also bring the deepest wounds. The key is learning to tell the difference between genuine bonds and greed disguised as affection. I chose forgiveness, not because my son deserved it, but because I deserved peace. And what about you? If you were in my place, would you choose justice or forgiveness? I would love to hear your thoughts. And if these stories resonate with you, stay with me for the journeys ahead, as together we reflect on the lessons of love, family, and the true strength of the human heart.